Have you ever held onto an idea so tight you nearly suffocated the possibility of being right? What if I told you that your biggest competitor isn't someone else, it's you, and the stories your ego and blind spots keep telling? Today, we're breaking those chains. Welcome to Principles for Success, Episode 5, Be Radically Open-Minded. Let's go from zero to CEO. Starting with the most powerful decision-making shift of your life. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of the greatest opportunity of your life, but the one thing holding you back isn't lack of resources, connections, or intelligence. It's you, not the real you, the potential inside you, but the version of you that's controlled by ego and trapped by blind spots. These two forces are silent killers of success. They don't show up in the form of a competitor or a financial crisis. They hide in plain sight, inside your own mind, dictating the way you see, think, and decide. And until you confront them, they will keep you from the growth you're chasing. Ego is seductive. It whispers in your ear, "You're right. You've got this all figured out." It gives you a false sense of certainty, which feels good in the moment, but is dangerous in the long run. Why? Because ego is about protecting your identity, not about discovering the truth. When someone challenges your viewpoint, your ego makes you defensive. Instead of listening, you argue. Instead of questioning yourself, you dig deeper into your position. You end up fighting to win the conversation instead of fighting to win reality. And in the real world, the truth always wins. Think about how many brilliant ideas have died because someone's ego didn't want to admit they might be wrong. Teams collapse, partnerships dissolve, opportunities vanish, all because someone's pride was more important than progress. Ego is a wall you build around yourself. It keeps your self-image intact, but it blocks out fresh air, new perspectives, and the very insights that could take you further than you ever imagined. The most successful people aren't the ones who cling to being right. They're the ones who embrace being wrong as the fastest route to getting it right. Then there are blind spots. These are even trickier than ego because you don't even know they're there. Blind spots are the things you don't see, but everyone else can. They're your assumptions, your unchecked biases, your untested beliefs. You can be absolutely convinced you're moving in the right direction, while everyone else quietly sees the iceberg you're about to hit. The danger of blind spots is that they make you confident in the wrong things. You think you're making rational decisions, but in reality, you're steering based on incomplete or distorted information. Blind spots often come from your background, your experiences, and your patterns. They shape the way you interpret the world. If you grew up in a system that rewarded certainty, you'll avoid questioning. If you've been praised for always having the answer, you'll resist asking better questions. These blind spots aren't weaknesses. They're just parts of the map you haven't yet drawn, but if you ignore them, they'll cost you. Now, here's where ego and blind spots team up. Ego keeps you from admitting you could be wrong, and blind spots keep you from even seeing what you're missing. It's a deadly combination. Together, they trap you in a bubble where every decision feels justified, but reality doesn't care about how you feel, it cares about how things actually are. Success belongs to those who can step outside that bubble. So how do you break free? It starts with humility, the willingness to say, "I don't know." That single statement destroys ego's grip and shines a light into your blind spots. It's not weakness to admit ignorance, it's strength. Because the moment you open the door, better information can come in, and with better information, you can make better decisions. You also need to invite others into your process, especially those who disagree with you. They can see what you can't. Instead of defending yourself, ask them to explain. Instead of shutting them out, bring them closer. Every disagreement is a mirror that reflects your blind spots, if you're willing to look. Overcoming ego and blind spots doesn't happen overnight. It's a discipline. Every time you feel defensive, that's ego talking. Use it as a cue to lean in and listen. Every time you feel certain, that's a signal to pause and ask, what if I'm wrong? What am I not seeing? Slowly, you train yourself to replace ego with curiosity and blind spots with awareness. When you strip away ego and reveal your blind spots, you don't become weaker, you become unstoppable. You're no longer trapped by your own illusions. You're free to grow, adapt, and evolve faster than the competition. And in a world that changes by the minute, that's the ultimate advantage. The truth is this: success is not about protecting who you think you are. It's about discovering who you could be if you had the courage to see clearly. Ego and blind spots are barriers, but they're not permanent. Break them, and you break into a level of clarity and opportunity that most people never experience. That's the difference between staying stuck and stepping into greatness. Most people walk through life convinced they've got the answers. They treat their beliefs like treasures that need to be guarded, defended, and never questioned. But the reality is this: the moment you lock yourself into certainty, you shut the door to growth. Practicing radical open-mindedness is about flipping that script. It's about choosing curiosity over pride, truth over comfort, and progress over ego. And if you want to build something extraordinary, whether it's your career, your business, or your life, this is a discipline you can't afford to ignore. Radical open-mindedness starts with one powerful shift: assuming you could be wrong. That simple mindset changes everything. Instead of walking into a room trying to prove yourself, you walk in ready to learn. Instead of treating challenges as threats, you see them as opportunities to upgrade your perspective. When you begin with the possibility that you don't have the full picture, you create space for the truth to reveal itself. That's where growth lies, in the space between what you think you know and what reality is actually telling you. The problem is, most people confuse confidence with certainty. They think being confident means defending their position no matter what. But real confidence is being secure enough to admit, I might not have this right. Imagine how powerful that makes you. You're no longer chained to your current understanding. You can pivot, adapt, and evolve faster than everyone who's too stubborn to change. You stop playing checkers and start playing chess, because you're not fixated on winning a single move, you're focused on winning the game. Open-mindedness is not about being indecisive or weak. It's about being strong enough to face uncomfortable truths. It takes courage to listen to an opinion that contradicts yours without getting defensive. It takes strength to ask, what am I missing? When your instincts are screaming, I'm right. But that strength pays off. Every time you suspend judgment long enough to truly consider another perspective, you gain insight that makes you sharper. You collect data you would have otherwise missed, and over time, that collection of insights compounds into wisdom. One of the most valuable habits you can build is surrounding yourself with people who see the world differently than you. Not people who flatter you, not people who agree with everything you say. People who challenge you, push back, and force you to stretch your thinking. The key is not to debate to win, but to debate to learn. Ask questions, dig into their reasoning, find out what experiences shaped their view. When you do that, you're not just hearing words. You're absorbing lessons that took someone else years of trial and error to acquire. That's how you collapse time and accelerate your growth. Think about the breakthroughs that have changed history. They almost always came from someone questioning what everyone else assumed to be true. That's radical open-mindedness in action. It's not just a nice idea, it's the engine of innovation, and it applies at every level, whether you're leading a company, making an investment, or figuring out how to improve yourself. The fastest way to get ahead is not by stubbornly sticking to what you know, it's by relentlessly seeking what you don't know. Here's the paradox: the more open-minded you are, the more decisive you become. Why? Because you're not making choices based on a narrow, fragile perspective. You're making them based on a wider, stronger foundation of truth. You're not swayed by shallow arguments or surface-level opinions. You've tested your thinking against resistance, refined it, and built conviction on what actually holds up. That's how you lead with clarity while others second-guess themselves. Of course, open-mindedness takes practice. It's not a one-time decision. It's a way of operating. Every time you feel defensive, pause. Every time you're certain, ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? Every time you're tempted to dismiss someone, lean in and listen instead. Over time, those small choices reshape your wiring. You build a reflex to seek truth over validation, growth over comfort, and here's the payoff. When you practice radical open-mindedness consistently, you put yourself on a different trajectory than most people. While they cling to their opinions, you keep evolving. While they fight to prove themselves right, you keep moving closer to what's true. And in the long run, truth always outperforms pride. The world doesn't reward stubbornness. It rewards those who adapt, those who learn, those who expand their perspective fast enough to keep pace with reality. Practicing radical open-mindedness is how you stay ahead of the curve. It's how you transform every conversation into an education, every disagreement into an upgrade, and every setback into a stepping stone. It's not about abandoning your beliefs. It's about refining them until they're sharp enough to cut through the noise and reveal what actually matters. That's the discipline, that's the mindset, that's the edge. Most people think disagreement is a battle, two sides clashing until one wins and the other loses. That's the wrong lens. Disagreement done right is not about defeating the other person, it's about discovering the truth. The art of thoughtful disagreement is one of the most powerful tools you can develop, because it transforms conflict into clarity and tension into progress. The goal isn't to prove yourself, it's to improve yourself. And when you master that, every disagreement becomes an opportunity to level up. Here's the trap most people fall into. When someone challenges their ideas, they instantly feel attacked. They tighten up, get defensive, and start preparing their counterargument before the other person has even finished talking. That reflex comes from ego. It wants to win, not to learn. The problem is, if you're fighting to win the argument, you might lose the truth. And truth is the only thing worth chasing. Thoughtful disagreement flips the script. Instead of asking, how do I prove I'm right? You ask, what if they see something I don't? That single shift opens the door to insights you'd otherwise never access. Suddenly, the disagreement stops being a threat and becomes a collaboration. You're not opponents, you're co-explorers trying to map out reality together. The art lies in how you engage. First, you listen, truly listen, not just to the words, but to the reasoning behind them. Don't wait for a pause to jump in with your counterpoint. Let the other person's logic fully unfold. Ask questions that go deeper instead of statements that shut things down. Curiosity is your weapon. Every answer they give is a chance to test your assumptions against theirs. When you respond, do it with respect, not resistance. A calm question is more powerful than a loud rebuttal. Help me understand why you see it that way carries more weight than you're wrong. The moment you make the other person feel heard, the walls come down. That's when the real exchange begins. Remember, people rarely change their minds when attacked, but they often reconsider when they feel understood. Thoughtful disagreement also requires recognizing believability. Not every opinion should carry the same weight. If you're arguing about medicine, the perspective of a seasoned doctor should matter more than your cousin who read a blog post. That doesn't mean dismissing people. It means weighing input based on track record. The most effective decision makers don't just disagree for the sake of debate. They triangulate with credible voices and use that collective wisdom to refine their own thinking. Now, let's be clear. Practicing the art of thoughtful disagreement doesn't mean you're soft or indecisive. On the contrary, it makes you sharper. You still hold your convictions, but you hold them with flexibility. You're strong enough to defend your reasoning and open enough to change it if better evidence appears. That combination, conviction plus openness, is rare, and it's what separates leaders from followers. Think about innovation. Every groundbreaking idea at some point was a disagreement with the status quo. If no one had challenged the way things are, progress would have stalled. But notice, the breakthroughs didn't come from mindless rebellion. They came from thoughtful disagreement. People questioned, explored, and tested until a better answer emerged. That's how industries shift. That's how legacies are built. In practice, this art takes discipline. It means biting back the instinct to interrupt. It means letting go of the need to win. It means training yourself to value clarity over victory. Every time you're in a disagreement, ask, am I here to win, or am I here to learn? That question alone will change the tone of every conversation you have. And here's the reward. When you master thoughtful disagreement, people start trusting you more. They see you're not driven by ego but by truth. They know you're not going to bulldoze them. You're going to engage with them. That kind of trust compounds over time. It strengthens teams, deepens relationships, and builds cultures where the best ideas actually rise to the top. The bottom line is simple. Disagreement is inevitable, but how you handle it determines whether it becomes destructive or transformative. Most people waste it, using it to protect their pride. A few master it, using it to sharpen their vision. You want to be in that second group, because the person who knows how to disagree thoughtfully is the person who sees further, decides wiser, and ultimately wins bigger. That's the art, that's the discipline. And once you make it part of who you are, every disagreement becomes a step closer to the truth that will move you forward. No one succeeds alone. You might think you're sharp, disciplined, and capable of seeing things clearly, but the truth is, your perspective will always be limited. No matter how smart you are, you can't possibly see the full picture on your own. That's why triangulating with believable people is such a game changer. It's about surrounding yourself with those who have already walked the path, earned the scars, and built the results. Their experience is a shortcut to clarity. When you bring their perspective into your process, you collapse time, avoid costly mistakes, and make better decisions faster than you could on your own. Here's the key: not all opinions are equal. We live in a world where everyone has a voice, but that doesn't mean every voice deserves the same weight. The person who has never started a business shouldn't influence how you build yours as much as the founder who scaled one to millions. The investor who's navigated multiple downturns has more valuable insight than the armchair critic giving you advice after reading an article. Believability comes from track record, its proven results, repeated success, and the wisdom that comes from actually doing. When you triangulate, you're deliberately weighting your decisions toward those who have earned the right to be heard. Triangulation is not about outsourcing your thinking. It's about stress testing it. When you're open-minded enough to bring believable people into the conversation, you expose your ideas to the scrutiny of experience. They'll spot flaws you overlooked. They'll challenge assumptions you didn't know you were making. They'll offer strategies you wouldn't have considered. Instead of operating in a vacuum, you're plugging into a network of truth. Finders who expand your vision beyond your own blind spots. The power of triangulation shows up in two ways. First, it saves you from disaster. Imagine you're convinced a new strategy will work. You've built your case, run the numbers, and feel ready to execute. Then you sit down with someone who's been in the game longer, and within 5 minutes, they point out a flaw that would have cost you years. That's not criticism, that's insurance. They just handed you back time, money, and energy you would have burned on a dead end. Second, triangulation accelerates progress. Instead of learning everything the hard way, you inherit lessons someone else has already paid for. That's leverage, but triangulating with believable people requires humility. You can't walk into the conversation needing to be the smartest person in the room. You have to be willing to put your ego aside and listen, even when the feedback stings. If someone more experienced tells you your plan has holes, your first instinct shouldn't be to defend. It should be to dig deeper, ask why, ask what they've seen, ask what they would do differently. That's how you extract the gold from their experience. Now, this doesn't mean blindly following everything they say. Believable people aren't infallible. The point of triangulation is to collect perspectives, weigh them, and then make your own decision with more clarity. It's about balance. Too often, people either ignore outside advice completely or surrender their judgment entirely. The art is in the middle, using others' believability to sharpen your own reasoning, without abdicating responsibility for the choice. Another piece of this is diversity of perspective. One believable voice is helpful, but when you triangulate across several, the insights multiply. If three people with proven experience in different areas all point to the same risk in your idea, you'd better pay attention. If they diverge, you get to see the problem from multiple angles, which forces you to refine your decision, making even further. Either way, you win. The smartest leaders and entrepreneurs are relentless about triangulating. They build advisory circles, they cultivate mentors, they surround themselves with people who have been tested. And notice, they don't just seek comfort, they seek challenge. They don't look for people who will rubber stamp their thinking. They look for those who will pressure test it. That's how you grow. That's how you elevate. Here's the reality. The fastest path to success is not blazing every trail yourself. It's learning from those who have already navigated the terrain. Triangulating with believable people is like having a map when everyone else is guessing. It doesn't remove the need to make tough calls, but it dramatically increases the odds that your calls will be right. If you're serious about building something great, don't isolate yourself. Find the people who have proven themselves, listen to them, and use their experience to shape your path. That's not weakness, it's leverage, and in the game of success, leverage is everything. The difference between those who occasionally stumble onto success and those who build it consistently is habit. Not talent, not luck, habit. And when it comes to decision making, one of the most powerful habits you can cultivate is radical open-mindedness. It can't be something you practice only when it's convenient or when the stakes are low. It has to become the way you operate, the default setting of your mind. Because the truth is, life and business will constantly test you, and if open-mindedness isn't ingrained, you'll slip back into defensiveness, stubbornness, and the illusion of certainty. Radical open-mindedness is easy to admire but hard to practice. In theory, it sounds noble. Stay curious, listen to others, admit you might be wrong, but in reality, it feels uncomfortable. It means confronting truths that threaten your pride. It means holding your beliefs loosely enough to change them in the face of better evidence. It means giving other people's perspectives as much weight as your own, even when it stings. That discomfort is the price of growth. The habit is built not in the moments when it's easy, but in the moments when it hurts. The first step in making it a habit is awareness. Pay attention to the signals. When you feel yourself getting defensive, that's ego trying to take control. When you feel certain beyond question, that's a blind spot forming. Use those feelings as alarms, not excuses. Instead of reacting, pause and lean into the discomfort. Ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? What am I missing? Who sees this differently than I do? That small pause is where the habit begins. The second step is deliberate practice. You don't wait for high-stakes situations to train this skill. You rehearse it in the everyday. Have conversations with people you disagree with, not to argue but to understand. Ask more questions than you answer. Expose yourself to ideas outside your bubble. Books, mentors, even critics. The more you practice in low-stakes environments, the stronger the reflex becomes when it really matters. Just like a muscle, open-mindedness grows through consistent reps. Another key is reflection. After each decision, win or lose, take the time to ask, where did I resist input? Where did I dismiss too quickly? Where could I have been more open? That process rewires your brain. It turns mistakes into lessons and builds self-awareness layer by layer. Over time, you stop seeing open-mindedness as a challenge and start seeing it as second nature. It's also about who you surround yourself with. If everyone in your circle tells you only what you want to hear, your habit won't stick. You need people who are willing to push back, to challenge, to show you what you can't see. Invite them in, reward their honesty instead of punishing it. The more you normalize hearing uncomfortable truths, the easier it becomes to embrace them. Culture matters, both in your personal environment and in the teams you lead. Making open Mindedness, a habit, doesn't mean you're indecisive. It doesn't mean you wander through life without convictions. In fact, it's the opposite. By constantly stress testing your ideas, you build convictions that are stronger, sharper, and more resilient. The habit isn't about doubting yourself forever, it's about refining yourself faster. Every time you let new information in, you sharpen your decision making. Every time you let your ego step aside, you gain a clearer view of reality. The compounding effect is massive. Over weeks, months, and years, every small act of openness adds up. You start spotting opportunities others miss. You avoid mistakes others walk blindly into. You grow faster because you're not anchored to outdated assumptions. And when everyone else is stuck defending the way things used to be, you're already adapting to the way things are becoming. The real payoff of making radical open-mindedness a habit is freedom. Freedom from being trapped by your own ego. Freedom from repeating the same mistakes. Freedom to evolve as fast as reality demands. Success doesn't go to the one who knows the most. It goes to the one who learns the fastest. And learning at speed requires a mind that is open by default, not by exception. If you want to build a lasting advantage, don't treat open-mindedness like a tool you pick up once in a while. Make it who you are. Train it daily, test it often, and turn it into your operating system. When it becomes a habit, you stop resisting reality and start aligning with it. And once you're aligned with reality, there's no ceiling to what you can achieve. So here's the truth. You're not your limitations. You're the space where new ideas evolve. Your greatest breakthrough isn't in proving yourself, it's in allowing yourself to be disproven. That's the core of radical open-mindedness. That's the zero to CEO leap. So stop battling with being right. Start fighting for being open. Burn your ego. Dismantle your blind spots. Let in real change. Go out there and be radically open-minded, because the world doesn't need more opinions. It needs more truth.